My name is Scott Rappaport. I'm an Associate Director in the Career Development Center. Throughout the day, we've invited alumni to join us for conversations about their careers in order to give you insight into different career paths, industries, and to get advice on how to enter and thrive in these fields. These sessions will be recorded. Our guest today is Andrew Napolitano. Welcome, Andrew. Andrew's a 2017 graduate from St. Joe's with a major in business intelligence and analytics, as well as managing human capital. He works for PwC as a senior advisory consultant. Andrew has worked for PwC for over 4 years, and prior to being full-time there, he started with the company as an intern. While at St. Joe's, Andrew was active within the athletic department. He also played hockey and water polo, and was in DSP. I'm delighted to welcome Andrew back virtually to Hawk Hill. Andrew, I have a list of 10 questions I'll be asking you, followed by about 10 or 15 minutes of question and answers from our listeners. For the audience, please feel free to write your questions in the chat box, and we will share them with our guests during the Q&A at the end of the session. Please remember, you don't have to wait to write those questions. So if something comes up that you think of in the moment, please put them in the chat box and we will definitely get to them at the end. One additional piece of housekeeping: if you put yourself into the speaker view, you'll be able to see both Andrew and I the entire time. All right, so let's get started. We're going to start with a series of career-focused questions. And the first one is, Andrew, can you describe within your current role the core responsibilities and what a typical day or week look like for you?
Absolutely. And before we get started here, I just want to thank you, Scott, and thank you, Trish, for having me. And I'm very excited to be doing this. And please throw any questions you guys might have as we go. I'm happy to answer them. So yeah, as Scott mentioned, I'm a senior associate. I work at PwC. I've been there for the past 4 years. I'm currently aligned in their advisory practice with a specialization in their financial services vertical. So a lot of my clients tend to be banks or FS firms. A couple of notes about my role. So as a senior associate, as you progress, oftentimes you are the primary face of the client. Obviously, there's managers, directors, partners who kind of lead the team, but oftentimes the day-to-day communications with the client tend to be led by a senior associate like myself. We're all delivering work, making sure our teammates are delivering their work as expected, and managing project financials is pretty important for us too. So I would say as a senior, those are my general responsibilities. And then for me personally, some skills that I use on a day-to-day basis, it's a lot of people and program management. So managing expectations with your client, but also meeting deadlines and communicating if there's any unforeseen challenges that come up, working with your team, making sure everyone's comfortable and managing the tasks that they have to complete. And also there's a fair amount of technical skills, like financial modeling comes into play here, knowing the regulatory landscape, what the certain laws are in your specific engagement. So, and of course, with the BI students here, a lot of data viz, a lot of data analysis, really being handy with data goes a long way for what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Cool. So, Andrew, it's clear that there's a high level of knowledge that you've gotten to at this point. When did you know that this was the career path that you wanted to take? And then also, can you talk to, like, how long have you really felt like it's taken you to get to this place, right? Because I think that sometimes with students, they feel like they have to get there so quickly, and it can be helpful to see that there was a real path to get there. So can you talk about both the career path and also the knowledge-based path?
Sure. So I've always been a quantitative kind of technical person. Even going back to like middle school, high school, I'm a big sports fan. I would just know, all the stats for Major League Baseball. I, watch Sports Center every day. That kind of stuff just stuck in my brain pretty naturally. So I knew, like, when it was time to decide a career, I was going to probably be more attracted to the quantitative side of things. And I was able to find the BI program at St. Joe's and kind of flex those muscles a little bit, kind of get involved some extracurricular activities. Things like the Tableau users group are like what I got interested in on campus, and that kind of gave me exposure early on to some hard skills that, that were right up my alley, that kind of helped parlay into this career opportunity. And that being said, I think St. Joe's as a whole does a great job of placing students in the job market, but has an especially strong relationship with some of the big four firms, PwC included. So really that recruitment pipeline starts, when you're sometimes a freshman, most of the times a sophomore, most of the times a junior. So if you fall in those categories, definitely keep your eyes and ears out on campus. The PwC is probably here looking for students just like you. And even if you're a senior, it's not too late at all. So reach out. But yeah, that pipeline was strong when I was in school, and it was just a natural parlay into doing things I like to do in the BI program, and parlaying that right into a career opportunity with PwC.
Great. So you touched on just now getting involved nice and early, right? You said sophomore, junior year, and I know that you had an internship at PwC. Can you talk about that internship and it leading to a full-time role, and also, what's the typical, career path for an entry-level associate in your organization at PwC?
Yeah, great question. So the group that I work with at PwC has changed names several times over the past 4 years, and just to save us some time, I'm not going to go through them all, but essentially it is a pretty direct route from business intelligence program to, using those skills professionally. It is almost extremely linear. So it was a natural transition. And once you get accepted into the internship program, the PwC does a good job of making sure you're kind of on rotation. You make sure that you see a couple of different engagements over your, I believe it was like 8 weeks program, could be more. But you get a pretty good idea of the type of work that we do, and if it's for you, or if you like something else. You can always raise your hand and ask to do something else within the firm. And I've seen a couple of peers transition to different roles within the internship program pretty easily. So it's really it's really designed to expose the student to whatever they may like the most. And at the end of the experience, most oftentimes it results in a full-time offer. So.
Okay, cool. So definitely getting in nice and early is the path to be taking. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is one of my favorite questions, just to ask people in general. What do you enjoy most about your profession? And if I could hand you a magic wand and you truly could change something, what would you change?
It's a great question. I think the thing about consulting is that there's a fair amount of variability. But with that said, like I'm a very structured person, and I like organization. I like structure. I arguably don't operate well without it. So this career choice actually offers a lot, what I like to say, like a lot of structure without repetition, if that makes sense. There's still a good amount of variability. There's still a good amount of new things day to day. So you're not getting bored, but at the same time, you kind of know loosely what to expect. And that's big for my personality type. So that's what I say I would like the most. Things I can change. Great question. I think a lot of different professions are seeing this right now with the transition to remote work, but especially for young professionals, it's knowing how to communicate and set boundaries for yourself that I think is really important. So, for instance, I'm working from home, as I believe many of us are. My workstation happens to be in the room where I sleep, so it's dangerously close to, I want to be able to close the laptop, walk away, and enjoy my evening, right? So, and even if I'm not in my room, I have work in my pocket. And just knowing how to communicate with your teams and your clients, and set your working hours, so to speak, is a very important skill, and that's something I think that young professionals struggle with until they figure that out for themselves. And I think that's something I would probably change is, helping the next wave of young professionals come in, build that skill set so that they're not getting bogged down with, requests and tasks outside of, what we would consider normal business hours.
So I really appreciate you talking about that, because I think that, college can prepare you for a lot of things. You can pick up a lot of technical skills, right? You can understand what that job's going to be, but there's very little training on kind of finding what it kind of sounds like, the work-life balance is what you were just talking about. So I guess as a follow-up, you said that you would change that. How have you learned to do it? Like, did you have a mentor? Did you have somebody who tried to point you in the right direction? Was it by trial and error? Like, how did you get to a place where hopefully you feel a little bit more comfortable?
Yeah, great question. So I think the general rule of thumb, and the students have probably heard this too in their first few years at college, is kind of try everything, say yes to almost everything. And that's the same advice that's passed along to young professionals right when they start their career. And I do think that's really important. Say yes to as much as you're able to in your first or second year. And then from there, it is really about learning how to say no and when to say no and the right way to communicate that. And that's important for you to set your own personal boundaries, but it's also important so that you're not overextending yourself, delivering, quality of work that's not up to your standard, and no one's happy in that situation. So I have had mentors at PwC that, share the same philosophy as me and have been great examples on how to achieve this and have helped me, communicate with managers and partners early on to set some expectations about, what is considered, or I would like to consider, my time. So they've definitely been helpful. And it's just, it comes down to communication. How you message things is often more important than what you're messaging. And it's striking that balance with your teams and while making sure that your work gets done, because that is primarily important.
Yeah, that balance, obviously getting everything done, but finding that balance is super important. What has surprised you the most about your career?
Yeah, I would say I think heading into work for a big four firm, as a young professional, I expected to be very busy, and I certainly was. Still am, I should say. But I've also had a lot of freedom to incorporate other areas of my life, with work. So in the past 4 years, I've seen an increased commitment by PwC on things like volunteering. I think when I first started out, it was more common that you would pursue volunteering, outside of work. And now they fully welcome it in. The firm wants to know what you're doing. And in a lot of ways, if you include that in your year-end evaluations, I think a lot of managers plus, managers, directors, partners see that as a positive, see that not as time spent away from work, but time enhancing your work. It helps you bring your authentic self to work and kind of just balance multiple priorities. And I think it just makes us happier. It helps us do better work. So I would say the ability and the flexibility that I've had to, balance family, personal growth. I'm also in graduate school right now for a data science master's degree. I'm able to balance that, a social life and some volunteering outside of work. I think being able to juggle all of that with my professional duties has been easier than I expected, and certainly encouraged and certainly rewarded. So I think that's kind of surprised me a bit.
That's great. And it sounds like you've advocated for that for yourself, which is, I think, super important, especially when you're a young professional. You need to do that. And that can be tough to do early on. So that's great. I want to shift gears a little bit, focus on some actions that students might take. And I also want to remind our listeners that if you have a question, please feel free to just put it in the chat and we will get to it towards the end when we're doing some Q&A. So Andrew, I'll ask you about internships a little bit more in a moment, but for now, what are 2 or 3 experiences that you would suggest students engage in while in college to help to prepare them for entering, your field upon graduation?
Yeah, so when I reflect on what it is I actually do, the skills that I actually use, I always tend to separate it into hard skills, like technical skills. Maybe you might consider that programming, graphic design, maybe it is for you. And then the soft skills, people management, project management. So I'm going to answer this question this way. Any experience on campus or off campus where you can flex those skills. If you want to build those soft skills, people and project management, you might volunteer at a resume building workshop program on school or on campus. Get involved with your clubs that you're in, do event planning, do fundraising, anything that makes you work in teams, reach out to people that are, off campus, maybe their local businesses, things like that. And then for the hard and technical skills, just reflecting on my experiences, just, getting involved in certain user groups that are on campus, joining interest group clubs. And, if there is a hobby that you have that uses a technical skill, that maybe isn't supported by something we offer on campus, do it independently. Put your work on the internet for free, whether that's, writing a blog or posting to Twitter, posting to Reddit, what have you. It's a great way to practice those skills and get feedback from people who are already in that space.
Yeah, I think that that last piece of advice where, going outside your comfort zone, maybe even outside of the university, not only will you gain experience by doing that, but I think so few students probably do it that it's going to really stand out. So I like that quite a bit. How did your education at St. Joe's really impact your work and some of the career decisions that you've made so far?
So I think that first and foremost, St. Joe's provides an excellent education and they provide a really strong connection to the workforce. Like I mentioned earlier, we tend to place students at a pretty high rate. That's certainly something to be proud of. But another thing to be proud of is that we tend to produce pretty well-rounded individuals. We're not just focused on, what we do in the classroom, but, we like to be involved in clubs. We like to work with other people. We're typically pretty friendly. So I think that aspect of the St. Joe's culture has really manifested well with me. Obviously able to take care of, my day job, but also, and I mentioned earlier, PwC supports this, but, allows me to get involved with some philanthropic initiatives, some volunteering. I'm a volunteer hockey coach on the side, and that's something I love to do. It's just the easy way to give back, and that is also supported by my employer. But things like that, I think the culture at St. Joe's really does foster. It really does encourage. They want us to, live greater, right? That's the Majas. And maybe be dating myself a little bit there, but just not being satisfied with kind of what your job is, whether that's a student or in my case a consultant, kind of going a little bit extra to serve those around you, I think is what I've taken away from St. Joe's the most.
Okay, great. And you also just proved that marketing campaign did work, at least when you were here. So that's good. So I mentioned that we would talk a little bit about internships, and I know we've established that you started with PwC as an intern, but can you talk about internships, maybe both from your perspective, but even if there were some friends or classmates that went through internships, finding them, securing them, being successful, what should students look for, all that kind of stuff, because I know that experiential component is so important.
Yeah, so if you're looking to prepare for a role similar to what I may have, any experience you can get with client service is a plus, but really be creative with the definition of client, right? Like it might not be the type of clients that I work with professionally, but maybe you're maybe you're an assistant to a manager at a local business, or you're helping a small business owner in the area. Like you truly are providing a service that's open-ended. Anything that allows you to wear multiple hats and work with other people, I think, is important. I know that as a student, I was pretty laser focused on getting a specific type of internship where I could use specific skills, but especially if it's difficult to find something, be a little bit more open-minded. Don't hesitate to jump at an opportunity with a small shop. My sophomore year, I interned for a startup company in Philadelphia, and that was very valuable for me because I got to wear multiple hats. I got to do a little bit of the technical skill building that I wanted to do, but also, I had to do other things to help them, kind of keep the lights on. So anything that can get you exposure that you'll be able to speak to and create a positive narrative about when you're interviewing later on after graduation is going to be valuable.
So I guess I'll ask, one follow-up there. I hear from students quite a bit, especially younger students. They say, I don't know what to put on my resume. I don't have any experience yet. And I kind of will talk them through, well, that makes sense, right? You're young, you're just starting in college, and employers understand that you're not going to have a ton of experience yet. So you've mentioned a few times going out of the normal, realm. And I don't know if you've been at this point on the hiring side, like how when you see resumes, especially of younger students, is that something that you look for, that creative side?
Definitely. So from my personal opinion, anything that shows initiative is going to be seen as a plus. I think students often discredit the experience they may have because it's maybe not in the corporate world or something, but anything, like, and not to discredit this at all, but even having a job on campus, maybe you work at Starbucks. I would love to see that. I mean, especially if you can balance the responsibilities of that job with the responsibilities as a student. That is evidence of a skill that you will need in the professional world. So I think some students do get discouraged about the type of experience they may have or may not have, and really just being creative with the things they put down on that resume that may demonstrate a wide variety of skills that are needed, right? You may not have financial modeling experience, but you certainly have experience working in teams or communicating with other people or balancing different initiatives. And any way you can exemplify that, I think, is valuable.
Great. All right, so we're getting close to the end of my set of questions. I have two last ones. I'll just ask them both. So the first is, what is something that you wish somebody had told you when you were in school? And then, is there a piece of advice that you'd like to give to students that are interested in this path?
Yeah, and I'll probably answer that with two things. I think leaving school with hard technical skills is what I would usually recommend. These are types of skills that make you perpetually marketable. Even if the job market gets tight, people are always going to need someone to do programming or to know statistics, or maybe graphic design is what you're passionate about. Things that you can provide a service for concretely, I think have a tremendous staying power, and you definitely want to leave college with one of those skills. Additionally, I think we talked about this a bit earlier, but have a good frame of mind about time management. And I don't mean time management in the sense of I have all these things to do and limited time to do it. I mean, how do you own your time? How do you manage your time? And like we were talking about earlier, I think in the first year or two, you do say yes to almost everything, but know when it's time to say no, and know how to say no, and understand that, at about that 1 to 2 year mark, you should start to flex that a little bit more. Obviously use your discretion, but just knowing that you do have ownership over your time is important as well.
That's great advice, and something that probably takes some nuance and learning to get to. So, all right, let's transition to our questions. I do see that a couple have been put in the chat already. Folks are welcome to put more in the chat, or you can either raise your hand virtually or unmute yourself. But let's start with the ones that are in the chat. And these two questions kind of go a bit together. So the first question is there a particular technical skill that you wish you knew when you started working? If so, what is it? And then I guess almost as a follow-up of that, currently, what technologies do you find most helpful for you? So was there something that you wished for at the beginning that you had known, and where are things now?
Cool. Yeah, great questions, Frank and Mari. So yes, technical skill I wish I knew when I left St. Joe's is I wish I was a better programmer. Python is one of the skills that I use in my graduate program to do almost all of my data science stuff. It is something that has come just now become handy at work. I think the industry's picking it up rather quickly. I'm also finding roles that use it more frequently. So for me, it was Python programming. And Mari, great question. What technologies do I find most helpful for me and my teams? I think fundamentally it is the basics of, I guess you want to call it database management, right? Like if I'm almost everything I do day to day starts with a Google Sheet, and knowing how to organize that Google Sheet and maybe set up very basic protections on it to, who can edit it, who cannot, what fields can be changed, that kind of thing, and having it talk to other softwares is very helpful. And I think what's coming next for everyone is there's been an explosion of people who are getting trained up on data visualization, whether that's Tableau or Google Data Studio, things like that. But also we're seeing a lot more machine learning, and I think a good place to start with that is programming, although down the line we will see more drag and drop type tools similar to Tableau, except for these machine learning type models. So familiarizing yourselves with those concepts, especially if you're a BI student, I think are very, very helpful.
Great. Are there other questions? Anybody want to ask a live question? Either from one of our in-person classes or somebody that's on, that just wants to unmute yourself. I certainly can ask more. All right, well, while people are thinking, Andrew, I'll throw one out there for you. So we didn't really talk about that much the culture of PwC, but can you talk about the culture, and more specifically, like how has PwC supported your professional development? You definitely talked about some of the flexibilities that they've given you, right? The volunteering time, all that stuff. But yeah, tell us about the culture there a bit more.
Cool. So I'll probably answer this with three things. One, about the culture. I think the average age at PwC is 26 years old. I'm 26, so it's all people my age. I think that lends itself to pretty strong social connections with your coworkers. Things like joining a kickball league after work, things like that. You really do build good friends, and it's not only good just for your social life, but you're building friends with people who are sometimes managing your teams, and having those people as professional advisors is pretty valuable. So that's number one. Number two and three are related in terms of skill building. So PwC does an excellent job with internal skill building. They like to upskill their entire workforce, whether you're necessarily looking for it or not. So lately it's been a big strong push in automation and data visualization. And I think that's valuable. I'm not sure you'll get the same progressive initiatives at other firms. And then the third point is, external skill building. So like I mentioned, I'm in a graduate degree. They're sponsoring a chunk of that, and they're very supportive and help me kind of balance that. It's not prohibitive at all. So they're very encouraging of that. So I think those three things probably would be my answer to this one.
Cool. So I guess as a follow-up, you mentioned the master's degree, which I know got mentioned earlier a little bit. Why did you decide to go back and pursue that? Why now? Clearly, it must help that PwC is helping to support that, but they've probably been supporting it for a while. So why did you decide now to go and do that?
I probably caught the bug junior year at St. Joe's. Dr. Campbell and Dr. Miori, they really were instrumental in me getting interested in this field. I just love, I love the quantitative side of things. Really enjoyed the statistics that they brought to the classroom. And I wanted to, ever since graduating, I wanted to continue that education. And I found a program that picked up where I left off and made a lot of sense to me. So, do I see myself as a data scientist by the true definition of the word? Potentially not. I think I marry it a little bit more with the business side of things, but I really do value that technical skill set, and that certainly started in the classroom at St. Joe's.
Cool, great. So Andrew posted a question here. What do you enjoy the most, or what do you enjoy about the consulting industry, and what persuaded you to get into it?
Yeah, I think this answer is probably one that a lot of the students on the line can empathize with. Junior, senior year rolled around at St. Joe's and kept getting the question, what do you want to do? And I don't know if I had a really strong answer to that question. So I went into consulting, and what that exposed me to is a diverse list of experiences in different industries, using different skills, accomplishing, different objectives. And that helps you find what you like. It arguably more importantly helps you find what you don't like, and you go from there. I'm still there, obviously. It means that I like it. So I'm still learning. I'm still figuring things out as I go. But yeah, I think it's a great way to get exposure to the different industries that we have.
All right. It's good that you still like it, for sure.
Still like it. My employer's on the line. I still like
it. Okay, so do we have any other questions? We do have a few more minutes here. Again, you can put questions in the chat or come off of mute and ask away. So, Andrew, I guess we've talked a lot about the past and where you've been, and but where do you see the future for you?
A great question. So I'll be finishing my master's in data science in May. And from there, I think there's plenty of avenues to get involved at PwC with some data science, machine learning technologies that we're taking to market as a firm. And I'm not fully sure I'm ready to take that leap into a pure data scientist role, but I think that the technical skills that you get as a requirement for that program are extremely useful on any project I were to work on. I mean, everything's data now, so having a strong Python background and an understanding of different machine learning concepts that we're starting to be exposed to by our clients has just become increasingly valuable. So to answer your question, I don't know, but I want to keep using these skills that I've invested in and I really like, and there's plenty of avenue for that at PwC right now. So
I think that's great, like that you're building the skill base, because we never truly know, right? Like what's next, and by having those skill sets, by understanding what's out there, it should lead to a lot of opportunity for you. So yeah, it makes some sense that you don't know exactly, but you're aimed in the right direction. So that's great to hear. Okay. Any follow-up questions or questions from one of our classes? All right. I know Trish Schaefer, the executive director in the Career Development Center, is on. Trish, anything that you want to add, or any questions that you still have?
I think I would just summarize what I heard from Andrew, which is just being very forward thinking, constantly be thinking about what's next and constantly stay in that learning mode. It's going to be important for you in an environment that changes so rapidly, but it's also guarantees your job security, and it opens up doors, which it seems like, Andrew, you're pursuing that with your master's. So, you know, constant learning, stay with it, and be intentional is what I heard. I think that's all great advice. Thanks, Andrew.
Very much agreed. All right, then if there are no more questions, I want to thank Andrew very, very much for joining us today, providing us with the insight about his career. I see that he just put in the chat to everybody his LinkedIn account, so that says to me that he's very willing to connect with you all on LinkedIn. So Andrew, thank you for that. As a reminder to our viewers, the session has been recorded. So if you want to come back and listen to any of it, we will have it on the Career Development Center's YouTube page in probably another week or two. We'll do a little bit of editing. And we do have sessions throughout the day today. So please feel free. You can, if you're not in another class that's participating, you can go on to Handshake and see the whole entire list of alums that will be joining us. So Andrew, thank you. This was really great. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.